Okay, so when you think of 17th century Europe, maybe you picture, I don't know, powdered wigs, grand courts, nations with pretty clear borders.
Right, like Louis XIV in France, consolidating power. Stable, defined monarchies.
Exactly. But imagine instead something more like, well, like a wild, high-stakes startup scene. A continent just constantly shifting, borders blurring, kingdoms rising and falling super fast.
A landscape where conflict wasn't just, a possibility. It was pretty much the background noise, the default setting.
And right in the middle of all that turbulence, this really incredible figure emerges, Jan III Sobieski. And he wasn't just another king, not just a general.
No, his whole story, his whole career, it's packed with these surprisingly relevant insights, lessons on leadership, strategy, even things like building a personal brand in today's world.
Which is why today we're doing a deep dive into Sobieski. We're going to look at his life, drawing on histories, biographies, even some amazing battle transcripts.
Yeah, we're treating his career almost like a playbook. How did he build his brand? What was his killer app? And how did he deal with what was, frankly, a super hostile board of directors?
Our mission, really, is to pull out those actionable lessons from his obsessive preparation, his battlefield brilliance, even his political fights. What can you, leading or innovating today, actually take away from this 17th century warrior king?
We think there are some real aha moments here, especially around entrepreneurship, how his challenges, his wins, they echo that same spirit. We've got a great stack of sources, historical analyses, personal accounts.
Even those battle details, it's a rich mix. So to really get Sobieski, we first need to understand the world he stepped into, this market he operated in.
Absolutely critical. Because 17th century Poland, or the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, it was not like the rest of Europe.
All right, forget absolute monarchy. This was this huge, sprawling, decentralized state, sometimes called a republic of nobles. The king was elected.
Elected. And his power was seriously checked by this powerful nobility, the Szlachta. And the Commonwealth, it was basically under constant threat.
Yeah, think about the neighbors. You've got Sweden to the north, often aggressive, Russia to the east, expanding, and the massive Ottoman Empire to the south, often near the peak of its power.
Talk about pressure from all sides.
Yeah.
And internally, deep divisions. This concept of golden liberty sounds great.
Some lovely freedom.
But in practice, it meant the nobles held so much individual power they could hamstring the king. They deliberately kept the central government weak.
So unlike Louis XIV, who could just say, we need taxes, raise an army, Sobieski, even as king, often had to basically persuade, cajole, almost beg the parliament, the Sedge, which the nobles controlled, for every little thing.
Right. Funds for war, reforms. Incredibly difficult to get anything done quickly or decisively. And this environment, this constant chaos and threat, this is the forge where Sobieski was made.
That's a good way to put it. In an era where everyone else was centralizing power, the Commonwealth was almost this extreme meritocracy, especially in the military.
Exactly. You couldn't just inherit military command easily. You had to prove yourself, demonstrate real competence, usually in brutal combat. And because of that constant threat,
There was a huge market need, right? Desperate need for a truly brilliant military leader.
a massive one. The Commonwealth had been through hell. The Khmelnytsky uprising, this huge Cossack revolt, tore the place apart mid-century.
And then the Deluge. The Swedish invasion in the 1650s, it nearly wiped Poland off the map entirely. These weren't just border conflicts. They were existential crises.
So the demand for a savior figure, a military genius, was sky high. And Sobieski. He didn't just luck into it. He spent years meticulously building himself into the answer.
That's a key entrepreneurial point, isn't it? Identify the most critical gap, the most painful need in the market, maybe one born from crisis, and then build yourself or your product to be the perfect solution.
He absolutely did. His preparation started incredibly early, and it was intense. Forget just standard schooling.
Yeah, you went to good schools, Noworskie College, University of Krakow. But his father, Jakub Sobieski, was heavily involved and had very specific ideas.
Very practical ideas. He insisted his sons acquire actionable skills, and languages were huge.
Okay, so what languages are we talking about? Latin, obviously, standard for the time.
Latin, yes. German, French, Italian, essential for European diplomacy and military affairs. But here's the kicker. His father put a massive emphasis on learning Turkish.
Turkish, wow. That's very specific.
Totally strategic.
Right.
Why Turkish? Because the Ottoman Empire was their primary, most dangerous long-term adversary. His father didn't just want them to read Turkish, he made them speak it. Active conversation, daily use, turned theory into usable skill.
That is incredibly insightful. Not just learning about the competitor, but learning their actual language, their way of thinking, presumably.
Exactly. It's deep competitor analysis from the ground up. And this wasn't just about ticking an educational box. It was about building a real, tangible advantage.
And this strategic investment continued with his grand tour of Europe, right? Around 1646-48.
Yeah, and again, this wasn't your typical rich kid sightseeing trip. It was basically strategic networking and intelligence gathering.
So where did he go? Who did he meet?
France, the Netherlands, England. He met people who would become major players later on, like the Grand Condé in France, a top general, Charles II of England before he was restored, William II of Orange.
So he's meeting future leaders, observing their courts, their armies, practicing his languages.
Honing his fluency, building high-level connections, soaking it all in. It was deliberate. Think of it as his intellectual seed funding. He understood preparation wasn't passive reading. It was an active strategy to build capital, intellectual, practical, social.
Creating that edge, that unfair advantage, long before he needed it on the battlefield.
Precisely. And he took this know your enemy principle even further with the Ottomans. He actually went on a diplomatic mission to Constantinople in 1654.
Okay, a diplomatic trip. Standard stuff for a rising noble.
On the surface. But Sobieski used it as a deep dive. He systematically studied Ottoman military traditions, their tactics, the janissaries, the sipahis, their whole command structure, even their psychology. He was analyzing them from the inside.
That's incredible dedication, not just relying on reports, but getting firsthand knowledge.
And get this, before that trip in 1653, he was actually taken hostage by the Crimean Tatars during some negotiations.
Hostage. That sounds disastrous.
You'd think so. Most people would see it as a major setback. But Sobieski, he apparently used the time to study them, their culture, their unique cavalry tactics, their raiding style.
Turning adversity into an intelligence opportunity. Wow.
Exactly. That intimate, ground-level understanding of his future adversaries, their strengths, weaknesses, mindset that became the foundation for his later successes, especially his asymmetric strategies against bigger armies.
It really hammers home that entrepreneurial lesson. Deep, first-hand knowledge of your competition is invaluable. And finding ways to learn, even from bad situations, can give you an edge.
Absolutely. And speaking of controversial learning experiences, there's the time during the Deluge, the Swedish invasion.
Yes, 1655. He actually switched sides. Served the Swedish king, Charles X. Gustav.
Oh.
Sounds like treason.
It was definitely seen that way by many Poles, hugely controversial then and now. But historians point out something crucial.
What's that?
During that time, he got an inside look at arguably the best, most modern army in Europe at that moment. The Swedes under Charles X were masters of disciplined infantry, combined arms, logistics, rapid movement.
So he was learning their secrets from the inside.
Essentially, yes. He absorbed cutting-edge military doctrine and practice firsthand. Then, in March 1656, he switched back and rejoined the fight for Poland, bringing all that knowledge with him.
That's audacious. It's like going to work for your biggest competitor, learning everything you can about their operations, their tech stack, their weaknesses.
And then leaving to launch your own company, using their playbook against them. High risk, definitely. But the payoff in terms of accelerated learning was immense. It gave him insights his Polish peers just didn't have.
Okay, so all this preparation, the languages, the travel, the deep dives into Ottoman and Tatar methods, even learning from the Swedes, it all leads somewhere. It leads to his killer app.
Exactly. The winged hussars, the hussaria, these guys were not just cavalry. They were Sobieski's ultimate weapon, a specialized, devastating shock system.
Tell us about them. What made them so special?
Okay, first, their main weapon, the copia. This was a lance, but it was incredibly long, sometimes over 6 meters, like 20 feet. And it was hollowed out to be lighter but still strong on impact.
6 meters. That gives them incredible reach. They could hit infantry or other cavalry before getting hit themselves.
Precisely. That first impact was devastating. And after the lance inevitably shattered, which it was designed to do, they weren't done.
What else did they carry?
They were loaded. They had a long, straight sword called a concerts, designed for thrusting through armor. They had a curved saber, the sabla, for slashing in close combat. Pistols, Even a mace that buzzed again for crushing helmets. They were equipped for sustained fighting after the initial charge.
Heavily armed. What about protection?
Top-notch armor for the time. While Western Europe was actually lightning cavalry armor, the hussars wore extensive plate armor, cuirass, pauldrons for the shoulders, distinctive helmets, very resilient against blades, arrows, even early firearms to some extent. They were like mobile tanks.
And the wings. We have to talk about the wings. Were they just for show?
Ah, the wings. Wooden frames, eagle feathers, sometimes other birds of prey, mounted on their backs or the saddle. Their exact function is debated, but they definitely had a purpose. Or rather, purposes.
Okay, like what?
One was psychological warfare, absolutely. Imagine the sight and sound. They apparently created this eerie, howling noise when they charged at full gallop. Terrifying for the enemy, probably spooked their horses too. Plus, the visual spectacle, these armored figures with giant wings descending like vengeful angels or demons.
Yeah, that would definitely mess with your head on the battlefield. Any other suggested purpose?
Some historians suggest they might have offered a bit of protection from behind, maybe against Tatar lassos, though that's less certain. But the psychological impact, undeniable. Add animal pelts sometimes worn over the armor. Leopard skins were popular, and you get a truly fearsome image.
Okay, terrifying image, great weapons, great armor. What about the horses?
Crucial. Specially bred Polish horses, often with Tatar bloodlines. They needed incredible speed, stamina to carry that heavy armor and rider, and the ability to perform multiple charges over a battle. They weren't just random cavalry mounts, they were part of the weapon system.
And the tactic was basically just a charge.
It was a highly disciplined charge. They'd advance in formation, starting at a trot, then building to a full, thunderous gallop, tightening the formation shoulder to shoulder just before impact, like a human battering ram. The goal was to shatter the enemy line in one devastating blow.
So compared to other cavalry of the time, Ottoman Empire, Tatars, Western cuirassiers, what was the hussars' unique edge?
It was the whole package. The reach of the copia, the heavy armor allowing them to break through, the psychological terror, the quality of the horses enabling repeated charges, and the disciplined execution of that focused, shattering assault. They combined shock power with resilience in a way few others could match. For Sobieski, this was his proprietary technology, his perfectly optimized system.
The ultimate product for the specific market need of defeating large enemy formations.
Precisely. And he proved its effectiveness dramatically at the Battle of Khotin in 1673.
Right, this is the battle that basically made him king. Tell us about it.
Okay, Khotin. Sobieski commanded about 30,000 Polish-Lithuanian troops. He's facing around 35,000 Ottomans who are dug in, well-entrenched in a fortified camp.
So, slightly outnumbered and attacking a prepared position. Tough odds.
Very tough. But Sobieski used his intelligence brilliantly. He knew the Ottoman army, many from warmer regions, was poorly equipped for the brutal late autumn weather on the Dniester River.
Okay, so you used the weather.
He weaponized it. The night before the main assault, it was freezing cold, snow, biting wind. Sobieski kept his entire army in battle formation all night long, ready to attack, but made sure they were sheltered and fed as best as possible.
And the Ottomans.
They were forced to stay exposed in their trenches, waiting for an attack that didn't come immediately. All night. Sleepless, freezing, their morale plummeting.
That's brutal psychological and physical warfare before the first shot is even fired.
Exactly. Then, at dawn, under cover of mist and continuing bad weather, he attacked. First, infantry and dragoons stormed the outer ramparts, clearing the way through the frozen, exhausted defenders.
Creating the breach.
And then the winged hussars charged into the Ottoman camp, shattered their lines completely. The demoralized, frozen Ottoman army just collapsed. It was an overwhelming victory.
And that victory directly led to him being elected King of Poland the following year.
Absolutely. It cemented his reputation. Khotin was the proof of concept. It showed superior intelligence, exploiting weaknesses, endurance, psychological tactics, and perfect execution with his killer app, the hussars.
A huge lesson there about not just having the right tool, but knowing exactly how and when to use it, playing on your opponent's vulnerabilities.
Couldn't say it better. Which brings us, inevitably, to his absolute masterpiece, the moment everything came together. The Battle of Vienna, 1683.
Vienna. This is the big one. The battle that arguably saved Europe. Set the scene for us.
Okay, 1683. The Ottoman Empire is making its biggest push into Central Europe in decades. A colossal army, maybe 150,000 strong, led by the Grand Vizier, Kara Mustafa Pasha. They've laid siege to Vienna, the Habsburg capital.
And Vienna itself, how many defenders?
Only about 15,000 soldiers inside the city. plus armed citizens. They'd been under siege for 2 months. They were starving, running out of ammunition, disease was spreading. The city was on the absolute brink of falling.
And Kara Mustafa, the Ottoman commander.
Immensely ambitious and, as it turned out, dangerously overconfident. He dreamed of conquering Vienna and then marching on Rome. He famously boasted he'd stable his horses in St. Peter's Basilica. He ignored advice to secure his rear, focused solely on taking the city.
So Vienna's about to fall. What about the relief force?
A coalition army was assembled. Poles, Austrians, Germans from various states. Altogether, maybe around 70,000 troops, significantly outnumbered by the Ottomans still.
Still outnumbered, and crucially, this relief force included Sobieski and his contingent.
Yes, about 23,000 Polish troops, including the core of his army, and most importantly, around 3,000 of his elite winged hussars.
Okay, so how did Sobieski pull off this victory against the odds? What were the key elements?
Several pillars. First, coalition command. Getting named supreme commander of this mixed German-Polish-Austrian army was a huge political win for Sobieski. These groups often mistrusted each other. Unifying them under his command required real diplomatic skill and the weight of his military reputation.
Okay, unified command. What else?
Logistics and deception. While the Ottomans were tied down by the huge siege operation, Sobieski moved his forces remarkably quickly, and his masterstroke. He led the main body of his army, especially the cavalry, on this incredibly difficult secret march through the dense Vienna woods.
The Vienna woods. Weren't they considered impassable for a large army, especially cavalry?
Exactly. The Ottomans certainly thought so. They hadn't properly secured that flank. So, Sobieski's army suddenly emerged from the woods onto the heights of the Kahlenberg mountain, overlooking the Ottoman camp from an unexpected direction. Total surprise.
Brilliant positioning. What was the third element?
Calculated risk and perfect timing. Kara Mustafa made a critical mistake. He kept a large part of his army trying to storm Vienna, even as the relief force arrived. He split his focus.
Didn't commit fully to dealing with Sobieski.
Right. So on September 12th, the battle raged all day. The German and Austrian infantry engaged the Ottomans on the lower slopes, pinning them down. Sobieski watched everything unfold from the Kahlenberg heights.
Waiting for the right moment.
Exactly. He initially planned the main cavalry assault for the next day to rest his troops after the march. But he saw the Ottomans starting to waver late in the afternoon. Their lines were stretched, their morale was visibly cracking under the pressure.
He sensed the opportunity.
He seized it. He didn't wait. In the late afternoon, around 5 p.m., he gave the order. And he didn't just send his troops, he personally led the charge.
Sobieski himself led the charge.
Absolutely. He led the combined cavalry forces, Poles, Germans, Austrians, nearly 20,000 horsemen in total, in what is still considered the largest cavalry charge in history, down the steep slopes of the Kahlenberg.
20,000 cavalry charging downhill. What must that have looked like?
Accounts describe it as overwhelming. A flood of black pitch, one source says. The sight of thousands of horsemen, spearheaded by those terrifying winged hussars with their lances leveled, thundering down towards them. The psychological impact must have been devastating on the already weary Ottomans.
And the impact when they hit?
Shattering. The hussars, with their momentum and focus power, crashed into the Ottoman lines. Formations disintegrated, panic spread. Sobieski, leading his best Polish troops, drove straight into the heart of the Ottoman camp, right towards Kara Mustafa's command tents.
He went straight for the head.
He did. The Ottoman army just broke completely. It turned into a rout. They abandoned the siege, fled in disarray, leaving behind their entire camp cannons, supplies, treasure, everything. Vienna was saved.
Incredible. So the keys were coalition command, surprise positioning, perfect timing, the psychological shock of the charge, and Sobieski's personal leadership.
And the combined arms aspect, too. The infantry pinning the enemy down before the cavalry delivered the knockout blow.
And the historical significance. You said it changed Europe.
Massively. Vienna marked the high water mark of Ottoman expansion into Europe. They were never a serious offensive threat to Central Europe again. It permanently shifted the balance of power.
So it stopped their advance for good.
Pretty much. It bolstered the Habsburg Empire, strengthened the Holy Roman Empire, and forged that crucial, if temporary, Polish-Habsburg alliance. Culturally and religiously, it prevented Central Europe from potentially becoming part of the Ottoman sphere. The Europe we know today would look profoundly different if Vienna had fallen.
So the entrepreneurial takeaway from Vienna, it's more than just having the hussars, the killer app.
Absolutely. It's about the whole strategic package. Superior intelligence on enemy weakness, Kara Mustafa's split focus, the unsecured flank, brilliant positioning, the surprise attack from the woods, and that crucial ability to read the situation, sense the tipping point, and launch the decisive move at exactly the right moment. That's strategic genius.
And after this monumental victory, Sobieski sends that famous message to the Pope, right?
Yes. Echoing Julius Caesar, but with a twist.
I came, I saw, God conquered. Powerful statement.
It was pure branding brilliance, heroic, humble, but firmly positioning him as the key agent. It cemented his image across Europe.
Okay, so military genius, savior of Vienna, but his time as king. That tells a different story, doesn't it? More of a cautionary tale, especially about leadership within an organization.
A profoundly different story, and yes, very cautionary. On the battlefield, he was the inspirational leader, led from the front, shared the dangers.
We mentioned him leading the charge at Vienna. That builds incredible loyalty.
An immense loyalty. And there's the fact that when the Sejm, the parliament, refused to pay the army, which happened a lot, Sobieski often paid his soldiers out of his own personal fortune.
Wow. Putting his own money where his mouth was. Real skin in the game.
Absolutely. His letters show how deeply involved he was, not just in strategy, but in the welfare of his men. For any leader today, that kind of hands-on, empathetic leadership, especially in tough times, is how you build a truly committed team.
But then there's the flip side. The political reality back home. The hostile board.
Exactly. This is the great paradox. The system that allowed this military meritocracy, the Golden Liberty, was the same system that crippled him as king.
Because the nobles in the Sejm held too much power.
Way too much power. Remember, he was an elected king, bound by promises he had to make to the nobles, the Pacta Conventa, and then there was the killer, the Liberum Veto.
The free veto. Explain that again. It sounds insane.
That was insane. It meant any single member of the Sejm could stand up and basically nullify the entire session and all the laws passed during it. One person...
One noble could stop everything. Army reforms, taxes, anything.
Anything. Imagine trying to run a company where any single board member could veto all decisions made at a meeting. It led to constant paralysis. Foreign powers could easily bribe one deputy to disrupt things.
So Sobieski, the brilliant wartime CEO, was completely hamstrung as the peacetime CEO.
Totally hamstrung. He had plans for essential reforms, strengthening the monarchy, creating a stable, modern army, improving administration. But the powerful magnates, his board of directors, blocked him at every turn.
Why? What were they afraid of?
They feared a strong king. They liked their privileges, their near-total control over their own lands and serfs. They wanted a hero to save them when needed, but not a strong ruler who might challenge their power base. They wanted a hero for hire, not a true CEO.
That's a powerful lesson for any founder or leader. Your operational brilliance can only take you so far. If the fundamental structure of your organization or the alignment of your key stakeholders is broken or hostile.
You can win the market battle, but if you lose the internal political battle, the whole enterprise might still fail. Sobieski won Vienna, but he couldn't win against the Sejm.
And this internal struggle also played into his foreign policy, right? He had to make some big pivots.
He did. He actually started his reign leaning towards France. His wife, Maryseika, was French, very influential. He even signed a secret treaty with France in 1675 aimed against the Habsburgs.
Against the Habsburgs, but he ended up allied with them at Vienna. What happened?
Pragmatism happened. He realized two things. One, French support for his real goal, establishing a dynasty, making the Polish throne hereditary for his son, wasn't strong enough. Two, the immediate existential threat wasn't the Habsburgs, it was the Ottoman Empire.
So he made a cold calculation.
A very clear-eyed, realistic calculation. He abandoned the French alignment, which was a huge political risk internally because there was a strong pro-French faction among the nobility.
How did he manage that shift?
With difficulty. He had to expose some French-backed plots against him, rally support, and ultimately push through the alliance treaty with his traditional rivals, the Habsburgs, forming the Holy League in 1683 that marched on Vienna.
That's a major strategic pivot, trading a long-term hope, dynasty with French help, for immediate survival, defeating the Ottomans with Habsburg help.
Exactly. It shows that adaptability, that willingness to reassess and make tough, pragmatic choices based on the biggest threat and the biggest opportunity is crucial for any strategist.
Let's shift focus a bit now to Sobieski, the man. His mindset, his personal life, his letters to his wife, Maryseika, are famous, aren't they?
Incredibly famous and quite revealing. He wrote to her constantly, passionately, shared everything, military plans, frustrations with allies, gossip, descriptions of battles, spoils of war, and deep, deep affection.
What does that tell us about him as a leader?
It highlights the importance of having that trusted confidant, that inner circle where you can be vulnerable, reflect honestly, get support. Even this larger-than-life warrior king needed that outlet.
You mentioned he wrote to her right after Vienna.
Yes, a long, emotional letter amidst the chaos of the captured Ottoman camp, describing the riches, Kara Mustafa's abandoned tent, expressing pride in their son Jakub fighting alongside him. It shows the complex person behind the public image.
A ruthless general, but also a loving husband and father.
Absolutely. Devout Christian, ambitious politician, confident leader, yet clearly deeply in love and reliant on that connection. It humanizes him, but also underscores a universal leadership need for that safe space.
And beyond his private thoughts, he was very conscious of his public image, his brand.
Oh, incredibly so. He was a natural marketer. He didn't just win, he shaped the narrative of his victories.
Like with the Veni Vidi Deus Visit message after Vienna.
Textbook branding. He made sure that victory got maximum publicity across Europe. That phrase was genius heroic, like Caesar, humble, giving credit to God, but undeniably centering him as the decisive actor.
It instantly created the legend. Sobieski, savior of Christendom.
Exactly. And the Lion of Lekistan, as the Ottomans apparently called him. He also actively embodied the Polish ideal of the Sarmatian knight, the noble warrior defending faith and homeland. It wasn't just propaganda, he lived the brand.
So the lesson is clear. How you tell your story, how you frame your successes, is a critical part of leadership and legacy building.
Your narrative is a strategic asset. Conscious image cultivation isn't vanity. It's about amplifying your impact and securing your place.
But despite the victories, the brand, the legend,
Mm-hmm.
his ending is kind of tragic, isn't it? Especially regarding his ultimate goals.
Deeply tragic in many ways. His final years were filled with political frustration. His biggest personal and political goal, securing the Polish throne for his eldest son, Jakub, to create a stable, hereditary monarchy, failed completely.
Why couldn't he make it happen? He was a national hero.
Several reasons. The same old noble intransigence, they refused to give up the elective monarchy. Constant meddling by foreign powers who wanted Poland weak. And sadly, bitter infighting within his own family.
Family quarrels.
Yeah, apparently his son Jakub and his wife Marysika were often at odds, which fractured any unified push for the succession. It undermined the whole effort.
So the great irony, he saved Vienna, saved Europe maybe, but he couldn't save the political future of his own country.
Precisely. He won the war but lost the peace. His death in 1696 led to chaos, a messy election, and accelerated the Commonwealth's decline towards the partitions in the next century, where it disappeared from the map.
It's a really stark reminder for any leader or founder. Success isn't just about the wins during your tenure. It's also about ensuring the long-term health and stability of what you've built. It's about the exit strategy, the succession plan.
Building something that lasts beyond you, and in that crucial aspect, Sobieski, for all his brilliance, ultimately failed.
So let's try to wrap this up. The Sobieski playbook for today's leaders. What are the core principles we've pulled out?
Okay, first, invest in deep strategic preparation. Like Sobieski's languages, his intel gathering, it's about actively building that knowledge edge.
Second, develop and master your asymmetric advantage. Find your unique strength, your winged hussars, and use it smartly to overcome bigger competitors by exploiting their weaknesses. Don't just compete, change the game.
Third, the hard lesson. Operational genius cannot outweigh structural flaws. You can be brilliant, but if your organization's structure or stakeholder alignment is fundamentally broken, like the Liberum veto, it can ultimately sink you. You have to fix the internal problems too.
And finally, lead holistically. Your brand, your character, and your company are one. Sobieski's personal leadership, his vulnerability, his brand building were key. But his failure in succession planning shows that leadership encompasses the long-term health and future of the entity as well.
Sobieski's life is just fascinating because it's this mix of stunning success and profound failure, a brilliant, tragic paradox. He gave Poland this incredible final blaze of glory, saved Christendom at Vienna, but couldn't stop the internal rot.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, our listeners. Sobieski's story forces us to ask, what fundamental structural flaws might be lurking in your company, your project, or even your own leadership approach? Are there underlying issues that even your biggest wins, your most successful product launches, can't ultimately overcome in the long run?
How do you make sure your victories today aren't just temporary triumphs, but actually build towards lasting stability and strength? What will your legacy be after you're gone? And maybe most importantly, how are you building for that future right now?